The Sunbox. Act 1. The storage problem. A solar house is easy to describe badly. The bad version is that it is a house powered by the sun. Glass lets sunlight into a space. Dark surfaces absorb it and turn it into heat. A room exposed to winter sunlight can become warmer than the person inside wants. The real question was what to do after sunset, during cloud cover, or after 2 cold days in a row. A house does not need sunlight in theory. It needs warmth at the right hour. Mária Telkes was a physical chemist from Budapest. She moved to the United States in 1925, worked first in biophysics, and later entered solar research at MIT. In the 1940s, water was an available storage medium, but it required considerable volume. Telkes pursued another route: phase change. A material could absorb heat while changing state, then release that heat later when the temperature dropped. In Telkes's work, the preferred candidate was Glauber's salt. At about 32 degrees Celsius, the salt melted and absorbed heat. As it cooled and crystallized again, it released that heat. Telkes argued for it because it was available, comparatively cheap, and well-suited to domestic heating. MIT had already experimented with solar houses before Dover. Telkes pushed towards a more ambitious storage system. In a 1945 proposal, she described a south-facing wall containing a relatively thin panel filled with salt solution. The wall itself would serve as collector, storage unit, and radiator. Act 2. The house in use. The best-known case is the Dover Sun House, built in Massachusetts in 1948. By then, Telkes had already run into institutional friction at MIT. Her idea of using Glauber's salt had not convinced everyone around her. Internal testing had disappointed her colleagues, and the proposal for a fully occupied house did not move forward there on the terms she wanted. The project survived anyway, but outside the normal university line. Funding came from Amelia Peabody, and the architect was Eleanor Raymond. Telkes designed the heating and cooling system. Later accounts called it the Three Ladies Project. The house itself did not look unusual until one understood the upper wall. What seemed like a band of windows was in fact a large collector surface. Solar-heated air moved into 3 heat bins placed in different parts of the house. Inside those bins, containers of Glauber's salt were meant to absorb and store the heat. The system was intended to keep the house warm for roughly 2 to 3 days without sun. The Dover house didn't stand empty as a showpiece. It had residents. The Nemethy family, displaced after the war, lived there with their small child. A heating method matters differently when people are sleeping inside the experiment. At first, the house looked like a success. Between January and August 1949, more than 3,000 people visited it. The project received national publicity. Popular magazines treated it as a sign that a different domestic energy future might already be under construction. Telkes used that publicity to attract further funding and interest from builders. But the house also exposed the limits of the design. The salt proved harder to manage inside walls and containers. It stratified. Containers corroded and leaked. The failure could not be assigned neatly to one cause. The argument moved between the material, its handling, the design, and the execution. The heroic version asks whether the inventor was brilliant. The domestic version asks whether the room is warm at 6 in the morning and who pays when it is not. The house showed that solar domestic heating was possible, but the system was not durable enough for standard use. Act 3. After Dover. The Dover Sun House did not end Telkes's work with solar energy. During the Second World War, she had designed portable solar stills to turn seawater into drinkable water. The intended users were people stranded at sea, including airmen and sailors waiting for rescue. The device worked without fuel or electricity. Sunlight heated the water, evaporation separated it from the salt, and the condensed water was collected for drinking. Later, she worked on larger solar distillation systems. At New York University, she also developed a solar oven with support from the Ford Foundation. The oven used an insulated box and a glass cover to hold solar heat around the cooking area. Research into phase change storage continued after Dover, because such materials could hold substantial amounts of heat without requiring the volume of a large water tank. Later systems used different mixtures, containers, and controls. Moving from one occupied prototype to widespread use required more than a functioning experiment. Builders had to understand the system. Manufacturers had to make reliable parts. Owners needed repairs that did not depend on the original inventor. Banks and insurers had to treat the house as a building, not as a permanent laboratory. Conventional heating already had those structures. Solar heating did not. By 1954, the Dover house had a conventional furnace. It did not leave behind a model ready to copy. It left a specification, stable material, repairable parts, and stored heat available when the sun was gone.